Welcome, one and all, to 30-Minute Theology. My name is Olu Ashako, and I will be leading you through the study tonight of Judges chapter 8. And the thought for tonight's lesson is that's interesting. Then the people of Ephraim asked Gideon, "Why have you treated us this way? Why didn't you send for us when you first went out to fight the Midianites?" And they argued heatedly with Gideon. But Gideon replied, "What have I accomplished compared to you? Aren't even the leftover grapes of Ephraim's harvest better than the entire crop of my little clan of Abiezer? God gave you victory over Orb and Zeb, the commanders of the Midianite army. What have I accomplished compared to that?" When the men of Ephraim heard Gideon's answer, their anger subsided. Now, as a reminder, Ephraim was a battle tested tribe. Like, they really enjoyed fighting. And whenever it was time to fight, they were one of the first ones to go. And they were known for being mighty warriors. This may be why they were upset. It was like, hey, we like to fight. Why didn't you send for us? We're the fighting clan. Gideon had to remind them, though, that their best was better, or I should say their worst was better than some people's best, his best specifically. He also reminded them of what they accomplished. They took out the great leaders in being Zeb and Oreb, and God had given them that victory. Now, they could have been upset because, again, they like to fight and they wanted the opportunity to fight, but war then and now is a money making proposition. It is a machine that drives finances. And they may have been upset about the game, which is what it seemed like with the statement that Gideon made, saying, "Hey, look, your worst is better than my best." And they also didn't realize what they achieved because they were so singularly focused on fighting and what they could possibly get. So Gideon helps them to remember what indeed has happened and what's important. Gideon then crossed the Jordan River with his 300 men, and though exhausted, they continued to chase the enemy. When they reached Succoth, Gideon asked the leaders of the town, "Please give my warriors some food. They're very tired, and I'm chasing Zebah and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian." But the officials of Succoth replied, "Catch Zebah and Zalmunna first, then we'll feed your army." So Gideon said, "After the Lord gives me victory over Zebah and Zalmunna, I will return and tear your flesh with thorns and briars from the wilderness." Succoth was located east of the Jordan River in Gilead. This was a part of the allotment that was given to Gad. So these were Israelites. These were his people, being Gideon's people and the people that were with him and that were fighting. But they did not stand with Gideon. They were like, "Hey, after you do that, then, you take care of them and then you come back and we'll feed you." This place was a very sacred place to the nation of Israel. When Jacob and Esau reconciled, this is the place where Jacob went with his flock and with his family. This was also the first place that Israel encamped when they left Egypt and crossed over the river Jordan. But instead of helping, they instead, being Succoth, decided to downplay and degrade Gideon and his efforts. Let's continue. From there, Gideon went up to Peniel and again asked for some food and got the same answer. So he said to the people of Peniel, "After I return in victory, I will tear down this tower." By this time, Zeb and Zalmunna were in Kakor with about 15,000 warriors. All that remained of the allied armies of the east, for 120,000, had already been killed. Gideon circled around by the caravan route east of Nobah and Jogbethah, taking the Midianite army by surprise. Zeb and Zalmunna, the two Midianite kings, fled, but Gideon chased them down and captured all their warriors. Peniel or Penuel, depending on how it's spelled and pronounced, like St. Louis is also called Hustle City, and Baltimore's called Chocolate City. But anyway, uh, Peniel is where Jacob got his new name after wrestling with God. And this is the place that tells us how many were in that Midianite horde: 135,000. 15,000 were left, 120,000 had been killed. And still, Gideon, with his little band of 300 men, were in pursuit of 15,000 warriors. Kakor, the city that Zebin Zalmunna was in, is also known as Penuel. So that may be another reason why the people were like, yeah, no, you capture them first and then come back, because of the closeness of those people to them. That weary and famine troop, famished troop. They weren't famine, but they were famished. But that weary and famished troop captured not one, but two kings and sent those 15,000 to flight, regardless of your condition, regardless of your perceived abilities. When you surrender to God, you can do great and mighty things. And this is a great example of God's ability to work through a yielded vessel. After this, Gideon returned from the battle by way of Harry's Pass. There he captured a young man from Succoth and demanded that he write down the names of all 77 officials and elders in the town. Gideon then returned to Succoth and said to the leaders, "Here are Zebah and Zalmunna. When we were here before, you taunted us, saying, 'Catch Zebah and Zalmunna first, and then we'll feed your exhausted army.'" Then Gideon took the elders of the town and taught them a lesson, punishing them with thorns and briars from the wilderness. He tore down the tower of Peniel and killed all the men in the town. So Gideon, being the judge, being the one that God appointed to lead Israel at that time, held those men accountable, found someone, got the name of the elders, and then beat them with thorns, tearing their skin. Uh, Puts me in mind of the cat of nine tails that Jesus was beat with, and that so many others were punished with by the Romans. Thorns, we know the crown of thorns was placed on Jesus' head. So that also is a nod to what was going on then. But thorns are a sign of punishment due to sin. When the earth was cursed, God said, that it will produce thistles and thorns. It's going to produce the weeds and the things that we go and try to get rid of in our yards. This is a result of sin. So Gideon took what was the result of sin and punished them for their sin of being disloyal, being disobedient. They're supposed to be there with and support their brothers, and they chose not to. Instead, they chose to mock them. What were they thinking? Like, this is interesting. Why would you do that? Most likely, they feared the retribution of Zebah and Zalmunna, who had been in control for that time, and was like, "Yeah, you and your little 300 probably not going to do too much. So, show me first, and then we'll help you." And sure enough, when they were shown, they had to pay, and pay dearly. This region was known for its fortifications. So tearing down the tower at Peniel took down their place of safety, as well as killed all the men in the town, which left that city, uh, left them very vulnerable because they didn't have anyone to protect them. So often we put our faith in our protection. We put our faith in the things that we have versus trusting in God. It's so important to be kind to the people of God. You don't know what kind of blessing you're missing out on, but more importantly, you don't know what kind of downfall you may avoid by doing the things that God says do. All right, let's continue. Then Gideon asked Zeb and Zalmunna, "The men you killed at Tabor, what were they like?" "Like you," they replied. "They all had the look of a king's son. They were my brothers, the sons of my mother, my own mother." Gideon exclaimed, "As surely as the Lord lives, I wouldn't kill you if you hadn't killed them." Turning to Jether, his oldest son, he said, "Kill them." But Jether did not draw his sword, for he was only a boy and was afraid. Then Zebah and Zalmunna said to Gideon, "Be a man, kill us yourself." So Gideon killed them both, took their royal ornaments from the necks of their camels. Gideon looked like a prince. He looked royal. He looked regal. Likewise, as children of the king, we also have a royal heir. We also are marked by the fact that God, our king, and our father. This is the reason why often you'll go places and people are like, it's something different about you. Like, I don't know, I can't put my finger on it, but you're not like everyone else, and you're not. It's because you're children of the king. And whether you're walking under the ordinances of the king or not, you can't escape the fact that you are marked by him. And so often, when we decide to go our own way and do our own things, people be like, yeah, you're not supposed to be here. You don't fit here. And it's because we are children of the king. One thing that was really interesting here is Gideon telling his son, his young son, to kill these two kings. It's like, why would you do that? He's a little boy. Maybe he did that because it would give honor to his son to be able to say, I've killed these two kings as a boy, and then, see what I can do as a man. Uh, it also would be humiliating to be killed by a boy. I believe this is where we get the cliche, um, don't send a boy to do a man's job, or be a man, do it yourself, which is what Ziva and Zalmunna says. Like, be a man, man up, do it yourself. Why are you trying to shirk your responsibilities? Another very important piece to take from this. We should not assign duties to those who aren't prepared for it. Likewise, we should not delegate what God has not called for us to do. Then the Israelites said to Gideon, "Be our ruler. You and your son and your grandson will be our rulers, for you have rescued us from Midian." But Gideon replied, "I will not rule over you, nor will my son. The Lord will rule over you. However, I do have one request, that each of you give me an earring of your plunder. Sorry, an earring from the plunder you collected from your fallen enemies." The enemies being Ishmaelites all wore gold earrings. "Gladly," they replied. They spread out a cloak, and each one threw in a gold earring he gathered from the plunder. The weight of the gold earrings was 43 pounds, not including the royal ornaments and pendants, the purple clothing worn by the kings of Midian, or the chains around the necks of the camels. They took a portion of what God blessed them with as a result of the war and gave that to Gideon. And we'll see what he did with that shortly. So let's keep going. Gideon made a sacred ephod from of gold. Let's do that again. Gideon made a sacred ephod from the gold and put it in Orpha, his hometown. But soon all the Israelites prostituted themselves by worshiping it. It became a trap for Gideon and his family. That is the story of how the people of Israel defeated Midian, which never recovered. Throughout the rest of Gideon's lifetime, about 40 years, there was peace in the land. Then Gideon, son of Joash, returned home. He had 70 sons born to him, for he had many wives. He also had a concubine in Shechem who gave birth to a son named Abimelech. One thing, just going back to the previous slide, when Israel asked Gideon to be their ruler, he said, "No, I won't be a ruler. I'm not equipped to rule. The Lord is the one to rule over you. The Lord is our king, and he's the one that appointed me and called me from my little scary place and called me a mighty man of valor and sent me out to do this. It's not me, it's God. That's our king. That's who we should give our allegiance to as being our lead." It's so important to know where your help comes from and reflect and give that praise and that glory back to God. It's so easy and so tempting to take some of that glory or to accept the glory that people would heap upon you for the things being done. Gideon did the right thing by giving it back to God. Unfortunately, he took the things, the spoils that God had given him through victory over the Midianites and created something that then became an idol, not only for him, but for Israel as well. And so often, that's what we do as human beings. We take the blessings that God has given us, whether it be um, our work or our homes, our positions, our children. We take so many of these things, our cars, so many things, we take them and we then make them the most important thing. We then begin to worship the gift versus worshiping the giver of that gift, who is God. It's so important to remember where our help comes from, how we receive the things that we receive. We receive it because God gave it to us, and He is the one to be worshiped. We worship the provider, not the provision. All right, last set of scriptures. Gideon died when he was very old, and he was buried in the grave of his father Joash at Ophrah in the land of the clan of Abiezer. As soon as Gideon died, the Israelites prostituted themselves by worshiping the image of Baal, making Baal Berith their god. They forgot the Lord their God, who had rescued them from all their enemies surrounding them, nor did they show any loyalty to the family of Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, despite all the good he had done for Israel. Unfortunately, after being set free of the tyranny, just the absolute devastation that the Midianites inflicted upon Israel. Again, uh, they conducted terroristic warfare, taking everything that they had every single year, leaving them with nothing, causing them to be in famine. And after Gideon died, 40 years he lived, but as soon as the getting got good and they got away from the pain, they turned away from God again. And not only did they turn away from God, but as the scripture says, they were disloyal to Gideon's family as well. Don't think that the good that you've done is enough of a legacy to keep others. It just really depends on what transpires and what is the future for your family. But of course, we can pray and ask that God will bless, because He does say that He'll give blessings to our children's children. So there are definitely things that we can do, but don't think that what we do necessarily is what will set them up for the rest of their lives, outside of setting the example of living a godly life and showing the benefits of that to them and praying that they walk in those ways as well. In conclusion, God knew, or I should say, Gideon knew where the victory came from. The victory came from God. God does great things through yielded vessels despite their shortcomings. So it is very important that we give our all to God. God has so many wonderful things that are within us that we have no idea are there. And just like with the two fish and the five loaves, little is much when it is in the hand of the master. We are children of the king, and children of the king stand out. They're supposed to stand out. They're supposed to walk, talk, and conduct themselves as children of the king, whether they do or don't. That is their responsibility, and it is ours to reflect Christ in this broken and dark world. Worship the giver, not the gift. Heaven and earth will pass away, but God's word will not pass away. Seek after that which is eternal, which is Christ. Next time we get together, we will discuss the first king in Israel. Until then, God bless and keep it together.